This is your grade 8 final exam in fractions, decimals, and percents, chapter 4. I'm sure everybody at the back of the class is listening intently and not being rude by talking. Thank you very much for that. We have 40 points up for grabs, so please pay attention as we go through these. A lot of you made simple mistakes, so it won't be very difficult to make the corrections to it. The first 5 questions are true and false. The first one says 3/4% is the same thing as 0.75. The answer is false. And the reason why is 0.75 is really 75%. And this one is really 0.75%. This one is less than 1%. This one is 75%. Clearly, they are different percentages. The second question says 0.5% is the same thing as a half. On this question, again, a half is really 50%. Is this the wrong question? Is this the right test still? Okay, 50%, and this is less than 1%. So clearly this also is false because they are not the same thing. The third question says 22% is the same thing as 11 out of 50. This is true because 11 out of 50 is the same thing as 22 out of 100, which is 22%. So it is true. Those are the same thing. Question 4 threw a lot of people for a loop. This is really asking for 0.005 of 120, or 5 thousandths of $120. 5 thousandths is the same thing as 0.5 hundredths, which is the same thing as 0.5%, or if I wrote it in fraction form, 0.5%. And therefore, these two numbers that I just circled here and here are expressing the same amount. They're expressing 1/2 of 1%, and therefore they are the same thing. So the answer is true. And finally, question 5. Is this question 5? Okay. Question 5 is 50% of 420. It says, show your work. So for these questions, I said during your test, these are mental math questions, so you need to do half of $420. Something like this I should have seen, and then I would have seen $210, and that's your answer. 50% of $420 is really half of it, or $210. 25%, you would first find 50% is 410, and therefore 25% is half of that, which is $205. Half of half is 25%. So for this one, 75%, I'd find 50% is 220. 25% is half of that, which is 110. And therefore, 75% would be the sum of those, which is $330. Question 8, 10%. We take the decimal for 10%, and we move it one spot to the left to figure out 10% of a number. So 10% of $210. I think most people got $21 for that one. Question 9, 1%. Same type of rule. We take our decimal and simply move it 2 places over. And for that one, 1% would be $240. For question 10, 5%. Mentally, to find 10%, we just talked about it, you move the decimal 1 place over. So 10% is $14. And therefore, 5% is half of 10%. So 5% is half of $14, which is $7. Question 11 is your new grade 8 mental math, 0.1%. For this one, moving it 1 place is 10%, 1%. 1/10 of a percent would be moving it 3 places, which would make your answer $2.80. Now, some people had this number, which is weird because $2.8, I guess it's a real thing, but doesn't really make sense. And same thing with this one. They had $2.800, which that's not necessary. So this is the best answer, but both other answers are correct as well. And 200% is simply doubling a number. So doubling 40/25 would be 80/50. If you had 200%, you have double that number. Your next question was your table. If you're given 1/5, you're asked to write it as a decimal and as a percent. So 1 divided by 5, if you did in the calculator, it would give you 0.2. Or you could simply say that 1/5 is equivalent to 2/10, and therefore its decimal 2 is a decimal. But as a percent, 2/10 is equal to 20 hundredths, which is equal to 20%. Your percent for that is 20%. In the next question, 0.002 is really 2 thousandths, which is a fraction is that. And some people wrote it in lowest terms, which was very nice because it really is 1/500th. But 2 over 1,000 is still the correct answer and is okay. And if we have that as a fraction, to get it to a percent, we need to have it as an equivalent fraction out of 100, which is this, which means it's 0.2%. Now 15.5% is really this number, so I'd like to see it this way, not like this. When I write it as 15.5%, I can write it as 15.5 out of 100, or 155 out of 1,000. Now that's the correct answer. If I reduce it to lowest terms, I get 31 over 200, correct. And as a decimal, if I read this one, it's 155 thousandths, which is 0.155. Now the next one here, the easiest way to do it is simply take 24 divided by 80, and when you do that, you get 0.3. Other people might have looked at this and said, you know what, I could probably reduce this both by 8, because 8's a factor of both, and you get 3 over 10. And once you had that, you could write it like this if you wanted as well. Either way works, but 3/10 is the same thing as 30 hundredths, which therefore is the same thing as 30%. If anyone made a lot of mistakes, it was on this next question, 10.4. As a fraction, it's 10 4/10, or 104 tenths, or 1,040 hundredths. This is really the one I wanted, or 10 2/5 in lowest terms, or 10 2/5 in lowest terms. However, of all of those, this is the important one, because if you go over here, 1,040 out of 100 is 1,040%. Okay, so 10.4 really represents the number 1,040%. And the last one, 0.01%, would be 0.01 out of 100, which is the same thing as 1 over 10,000, which is your answer as a fraction. And 1/10,000th, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, is 0.0001. Good gravy. Your next question says, what is 5.5% of 220? Use it mentally. So the first thing I do is 10% is $22, and 5% would be half of that, which is $11. 0.5%, we move it 3 places, is 22 cents. So therefore, the sum of this number and this number is the same, is going to be 5.5%, which is $11. No, I did that wrong, didn't I? Did I make a mistake there? Did I make a mistake? Oh, yes, I did. I did make a mistake right here. Sorry. 0.5%. 1% is $2.20, and therefore half a percent, sorry, is $1.10. Add those together, you get $12.10. That's my fault. So 5.5% is 5% plus half a percent to get you $12.10. Question 15. This should say 15 here, not blank. 105.5%. Well, 100% is 480. 10% is $48. 5% is half of 10%. And half a percent is half of 1%, and 1% is 480. So that would be a half percent, which would be half of 1%. So this number plus this number plus this number is your answer, which is 504, 506, 40. 105.5%. Question 16, I think. Is that question 16? Where's my answer? Hang on a second. All right, question 16 says 11.5%. So 10% plus 1% plus a tenth of a percent equals 11 and a tenth percent. So 10% if I move my decimal one place will give me $40. 1% if I move it two places will be $4. And a tenth of a percent if I move it three places will be 40 cents. So the sum of those is $44.40. The next question, which is question 17, says 12 3/4% using a calculator. So 12 3/4% as a decimal is that. As a fraction is this. As a better fraction is this, and therefore as a decimal is this. So 12 3/4% as a decimal is this. And if you multiply that by 420/50, so therefore if I take my calculator and go 12 3/4% of 420/50, the answer is $53.61 approximately. So that's your answer, rounded to the nearest cent. Your next question asks you for 5/100ths% of 440. So this would be this fraction, which is this better fraction, which is 5/10,000ths of 440. So 0.05% is a really small amount. It's not much at all. And if I take my calculator and say oh, for heaven's sake, what is 0.0005 times the 440? The answer is 22 cents. Your next question, question 19, not 16, but 19. 5/5%. So 5/5% is really the same thing as 5.2% because 1/5 and 2/10 and 2/10 are all the same thing. So it's 5/5 is 5.2. So 5.2% is this is a bad fraction and this is a better fraction, which as a decimal, 5.2% of the 4,000. Take my calculator again. Oh, for heaven's sake. There we go. That's better. So 5.2% of 4,000 is $208. Okay, so the answer for that question is 208. Your next question, question 20. Question 20, we have what is the fraction, decimal, and percent of this picture? Well, this is 69% would be up to here. And then we'd have this additional part, which is less than a percent. It's actually 3/4%. So this is as a percent, or this number. As a fraction, this is not wrong, but this is the better fraction. And then in lowest terms, you could reduce that to lowest terms if you want. But with this, you could then say it's 69.75% is 0.6975. Each of those was worth 1 point. Question 21 says, what is this picture representing? Well, right here, this is 100%. And this is 95%. So together, this whole thing represents 195%, or as a fraction, 195/100ths, or a better fraction, as a mixed fraction, is this one, 1 whole square and 95/100ths of another square. And as a decimal, 1 and 95/100ths. So that's worth 1 point each for those three. Question 17 says use the grids to represent 2.5%. So if this whole thing is 100%, 2% would be this much, and 0.5% would be this much. And then you can take it over here and magnify it to show what this really looks like. It's 0.5%, and that would be 2.5%. 125%, you would have to take, I'll take my highlighter here. Take this whole thing and shade that whole thing in for 100%. And then for 25%, 10, 20, 20, oh, I went 26%, but you get the idea, 25%. And finally, your last question, which a lot of people got the wrong answer, but you got part marks for showing your work. So if we have a 3.5% discount on this TV here, so if I think about this price here, this is the $2,240 TV. If I'm getting a 3.5% discount, that means I'm going to pay for 96.5% of the TV's cost. So there's two ways you could figure it out. Figure out the 3.5% and subtract it from 2240. Or a better method is to calculate 96.5%, which is what you have to pay for. So 96.5% is that number of the 2240. So after the discount is given, if I take my calculator, 96.5% of the $2,240 TV, all I'm paying for after my teacher discount is $2,161.60. Okay? Now, alternatively, you could have found the 3.5%, which is 3.5% of the 2240, and that would be a discount of $78.40. Take your 2240, and subtract your $78.40, and that would be the same number. Now, to get the tax on top of that, I got to go real quick because the bell's going to go. 5.1%. There it goes. All right. Okay, people have left the building. I still have time to finish this real quick. So after my teacher discount is $21.61. Now I have to add 5.1% HST. So 5.1%, of course, would be 5.1 out of 100, or 51 thousandths, which is 0.051. So 0.051 of the 2161.60 that I have to pay is the tax I'd have to pay. So 0.051, 5.1% of 2161.60 is, I'd have to pay $110.24 tax. Add that on to the cost of my TV, and the final price is $2,271.84. Okay, that's the final answer. That's the one I'm looking for.